Let's solve set matrix zeros problem. In a previous video, I showed you one approach where we use some additional space, that is for one row space and one column space, to solve this problem in place. And I also talk how to solve using additional matrix. That's also, I just talked about that. And this is the code for having one additional row and additional column, and that's way we solve. And wherever we saw the zero, we made this row and this column zero. So that's the problem we are discussing today. uh, I'm not going to use additional row or additional column here, but what I do, I will mark the logic. I will see, I'll go and see if there is a zero in any cell. Then I will mark this row here itself. I'll mark it zero, and in this column, and in this row here, in these two places, I will mark zero. And when I mark zero, then next time when I iterate, I will iterate from the second row and the second column from here. And if I see zero here, and if I see the zero in this place, because we have already marked it zero, so if I find zero here, or if I find zero here, then I'll make it zero here. And if I come to this place again, and I will see, okay, there is a zero at least here, I'll mark it zero. In this way, when I come to this place, then I see that, okay, there is a zero here. We put the zero here itself, and then I'll make it zero. So in this way, I will iterate through this I1 and I row 1 and j column, like here this place. So this place I will iterate and mark all zero. And before processing this, I will handle this first row and this first column separately. So before this also, I'll just check here, is there any zero in this row or not, if there is any zero in this column or not. And in this way, I will use two additional variable x and y. And then later, I can again process this. I will iterate this row and the column separately based on x and y value, and then I will mark it zero again. So in that case, we will not use any additional space here. That's just two variable x and y, and we can solve this problem. So let's handle this. So I'm just going to comment this our old code here. That's the approach one. That's, you can see my previous video and you can find this. So now I'll declare two variables, x maybe I can just say false, and the y, I'll say false here. And I'll check, I will iterate this row and this row and in this column. So for I0, I less than length of matrix I plus plus, okay. So I'm checking in this row. So my row is variable, so I'll say matrix I, and the column is fixed, so column is in this row. So in this case, if I row, then I is 0 and j is variable. So I can use the I also, but usually I use j for this column. So let's make it j plus plus here, j. So the row is fixed, and each column we are checking. So in this way, in any row, if you find 0, so I'm just checking if in this row, like any column in this row, if you find 0, then we can say this x for the row x is true. So we found 0 in a row, in the same in a first row. In the same way, we want to check in this column if there is any 0 or not. So in this column again, so if you go to this column, then row is changing, so I'll just make it I 0, I. So this is a different row, then there's a length of matrix here, and this is, in this case, it's a different column, so it's a matrix 0. Okay, and in this case we can make y true. Like if find in any row, if we find 0, we'll make true. So if any row is changing, so in this case I'll put I here and the column is fixed. So I handle separately. I just created xy variable and mark it xy. If there is a 0, x will be true or y will be true based on this row and column 0 values. So next thing is I will mark this row and the column if we find the 0 internally here. So I'll start from the I1 and J1. So for I is equal to 1 and I less than length of matrix I plus plus, and for J1, J less than matrix 0, J plus plus. Let's start marking. So if we see if AI and J is 0, if any cell is 0, then if, like, let's say this is 0, then we need to come to this row. So if we come to this row here, like first row and this column, then I will say here that is this is not A, but this is a matrix. So I'll say the matrix and our row is fixed, so 0 row and then J column, that's I'll make it 0. And also in a matrix our I is changing but the column is fixed, so if in a particular row the column is 0, and that's I'll mark it 0. So in this way, if you find the 0 in any cell, we mark the corresponding in the column or row value to the 0, and the next thing we'll go and set that 0. So the marking is done. So let me copy this, and now we'll check if matrix is like 0 row and if the column is 0, or I can just directly use this, or any row. In this row, if this value is 0, then matrix Ij is 0. So in this way we handle the internal portion except in the first row and the first column. Now we can handle the first row and the first column separately. So come out of this for loop, and then we can check if x is 0. If x is 0, if x is 0, that means this row, everything in a row will be 0. So in this row, then matrix, so row is fixed and the column is changing. So for J0, J less than length of matrix 0 j plus plus. In this case matrix, and this row is fixed and the column is changing, so each column will just make it 0. Okay, so in the similar way we can check if y is 0, then we can make this column 0. If y is 0, let's format this code. If y is 0, then if the y is 0, then we need to traverse each row for the first column. So I is 0, I less than matrix, I plus plus, I is changing which row we are going, so I is changing, and j is fixed, that is 0. So that's all. So let's run it. Oh, so if x is we made it x value will make true or false, true or false, or y true. So let's make it x true if it is true, or if it is y is true. I accepted, submit. Okay, so that's all for now. Thank you.